I think what surprised me most about Galaxy 1 was how good it was. I know that sounds like a strange statement. You're like, of course Galaxy 1's good. But actually, in my own personal memory, that's not where Galaxy 1 sits. And I suppose that's as good a time as any to segue into something, which I'm not going to do, because I forgot that the next thing I'm supposed to talk about is the pluses and minuses. So core story, story presentation, core gameplay, yes. Gameplay presentation, yes. That'll be important for our next video, too. I should mention that I was playing the Switch version. I kind of can't go back to playing the Wii version at this point, for reasons I'll discuss next time. So, that was fun. But how many of you, like, one of the fundamental principles of the review system that I currently use, that we developed over the course of many, many years, is that I like having something a little bit more tangible and a little bit more practical, right? I know you know what I mean by this, but I always fail at explaining it. You ever have a vague memory of something and you think, oh yeah, such and such. And when asked about it, you say, oh, it's because such and such. But both of those things are wrong. It's just vague memory. This is something I would point out periodically. For example, when going through my Star Trek series, when I was covering Trek and going through the Ruminations, I would be like, how many of you think such and such? Would you believe it only happens 3 times? And my tone was always that I was also surprised by that. Because certain things stick in our memories more. And if we watch a specific scene multiple times, or if we've only watched a specific episode multiple times, or if we just don't remember the other things, our vague memory kind of fills the gaps and presumes, ah, that happened all the time, but it only happened 3 times. You get the idea, right? It's the same thing when it comes to things that we like and dislike, in my opinion. I actually was talking about this very, very recently with regards to Super Mario Bros. Lost Levels, and the nature of how most people give feedback when it comes to things they like and don't like. I'll cover that later. The important part now is that for me personally, actually having something tangible to look at and say, that's good, that's good, that's bad, that's good, that's bad, that's good, that's good, tends to work better for me than just saying, oh yeah, I like it. Point in case, Mario Galaxy 1 is a game that if you asked me if I liked it, I'd be like, eh. Because all my memories of that game are ripping my teeth out trying to do the 100% of that game, which effectively means playing through the entire game a second time as Luigi, which I did with my friend Gary. That was fun and all, but we both kind of hated that. And so my memories of that game, my vague memories, are bad. So when I sit down and I play this game, it's like, oh my god, it's amazing. You understand the surprise. The other thing I find fascinating about Galaxy 1, if I could share, if you don't mind, I went into more detail on this on the stream as usual, but as usual, these are supposed to be the summary of the summary of the summary of the summary. This is as summarized as it gets right here, by the way. It's not even a joke. This is the super duper mega ultra summary for people who only have 5 minutes. So Galaxy. Some of you probably know I have a phrase. There's works of fiction, you know, books, movies, shows, games that are Star Wars, and then there's ones that are Jurassic Park. Jurassic Parks are things where all the pieces are in place, and it just clicks. And it's amazing and it's awesome. Star Wars is where none of the pieces are in place, and it's just kind of bumbling along, and nobody has any idea what they're doing, and it's just somehow is amazing as a result. Mario Galaxy 1 is a Star Wars. I just realized what that means, but I don't mean it as a pun. I mean that sincerely. It's definitely a Star Wars work. They had tech demos. They were scrambling to try and make this game. It was actually originally designed for the GameCube. They were practicing different types of things. There were people trying to throw in new experimental ideas in terms of tech, in terms of platforming, in terms of camera. They had to reinvent how the camera works for Galaxy 1. They had to invent a physics system, arguably for the first time. Just all kinds of stuff. And everyone was just throwing stuff at the wall. And it turned out to be Mario Galaxy 1. It's actually a little shocking that it's as good as it is. It's also the beginning of what I mentally call the dead era of Nintendo story, because there's this era. This is actually cool. So everybody knows that, you know, Miyamoto hates story in games. Cool. That's a very, very commonly repeated thing. We probably don't know is that Miyamoto doesn't actually have a lot of direct power or control at Nintendo. It hasn't for a very long time. The last project he actually personally was involved with was a game that was canceled, but essentially right before Mario Sunshine. It was called Mario 128. And he hasn't been involved directly in that side of things for a long time. Now, he's still involved in game development. he obviously still likes designing and making and working, and of course he's got his pet franchise Pikmin, which he likes to dabble in pretty much all the time. But I bring all this up because despite the fact that he's not the boss, when Miyamoto says something, people tend to listen to it. I actually have a mental term for this. I call this the George Clooney effect. George Clooney may just be an actor, but he usually had more influence and control over a film than the directors and producers of that film, just because he had that level of clout. Same concept, same energy, right? So what actually happened is Galaxy 1 came out, and several people insisted on trying to throw tidbits. It was just the beginnings of story, but there's like the storybook mode, there's inferences, there's the concept of Rosalina and the time dilation. And if you pay attention, Mario Galaxy 1 was intended to be kind of a narrative reboot of the setting, because what happens at the end of Galaxy 1, small spoilers, is that the universe, gets rebooted. New universe, different style. This will be relevant when we get to Galaxy 2. And that was going to be a launching point for what was supposed to be a heavier focus on narrative. And Miyamoto said, I don't like that. And for the better part of a decade after this, developers all across Nintendo's first, second, and third-party developers, all the ones who actually had ties to Nintendo, so I guess that's really just first and second party, sorry. Don't know why I said third party. Forgive me. First and second party developers were all like, oh no, and all just kind of took a step back from story. This had an impact on a lot of games. This impacted Skyward Sword. This impacted Mario & Luigi 5, I want to say. And, of course, completely destroyed Paper Mario Sticker Star. And so forth and so on. There's other games that kind of fell prey to this. And we're only more recently finally dragging ourselves out of that era. And people are starting to dip their toes more into a more narrative focus when it comes to core Nintendo games, as we've already seen with Metroid Dread and Super Mario Odyssey, as well as, obviously, Tears of the Kingdom, which was pushing away from the Breath of the Wild approach, which was still stuck in that era. Make sense? So that sucks. Except for the purposes of Galaxy 1, it does make the game a little bit more interesting, doesn't it? Because there is this narrative framework in the background. It's not much. It's not War and Peace. I don't actually like War and Peace. And I just lost all my literary geeks. But, all my literary geek viewers. But I do think that it helped. And that goes to something, one of the most common comments, I got this on stream like 5 or 6 times. Mario games don't need a narrative. And the answer is no, of course they don't. No game needs a story axis. And I stand by that firmly. However, every game can be improved by a good story, in my opinion. And I have the last 40 years as evidence for that. In my opinion, every time that a game that is predominantly gameplay focused dips its toes into having a good narrative side of things, it has only improved the overall work. And here's my latest evidence for that. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that. But we'll talk more about this next time when it comes to Galaxy 2. I'm going to go get ready for stream. We're streaming the rest of Super Mario Bros. Advance, and then we're going to hit Mario Bros. 3. So.